Tonight, we are going to talk about liars. Specifically, the kind of liars who wore expensive suits, worked in beautiful offices, and stole billions of dollars from people who trusted them. These are not stories about petty theft. These are stories about some of the most elaborate financial frauds in history. Schemes so audacious, so brazen, that even after they were exposed, people struggled to believe they had actually happened. Make yourself comfortable. These stories are fascinating, and they are all true. Let us begin with Charles Ponzi, the man whose name became synonymous with financial fraud itself. In 1920, Charles Ponzi arrived in Boston with an idea. He told investors they could make a 50% profit in just 45 days. The mechanism, he explained, involved international postal reply coupons, a type of coupon that could be bought cheaply in one country and redeemed for more money in another. It sounded complicated enough to be plausible, and the returns were extraordinary. Investors lined up. Word spread. Within months, Ponzi was taking in millions of dollars. But here is the thing. Ponzi was never actually buying postal coupons. He was taking money from new investors and using it to pay the old investors. As long as new money kept flowing in, everyone was happy. Everyone was getting paid. The scheme appeared to be working perfectly. At his peak, Ponzi was taking in $250,000 per day in 1920 dollars. Adjusted for inflation, that is roughly $4 million per day in today's money. But the math of a Ponzi scheme is merciless. You need an ever-increasing supply of new investors, and eventually, inevitably, you run out of new people. In August of 1920, the scheme collapsed. Ponzi was arrested. Investors lost approximately $20 million. Hundreds of families were ruined. And yet, remarkably, the scheme was so simple that it has been repeated hundreds of times since then, almost always successfully, for a while. Because people want to believe that extraordinary returns are possible without extraordinary risk. They never are. Now let us talk about the most famous Ponzi scheme in history, the one run by Bernie Madoff. Madoff was not some unknown con artist. He was the former chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, one of the most respected figures on Wall Street. Charities, universities, hedge funds, and wealthy families all entrusted their money to him. His fund reported steady annual returns of 10 to 12%, year after year, regardless of whether the market went up or down. In good times and in bad times, Madoff delivered. And that, of course, was the problem. No legitimate investment strategy produces consistent returns regardless of market conditions. But nobody wanted to question it, because the returns were good and Madoff was Madoff. The fraud lasted for at least 17 years. Some estimates suggest it may have started as early as the 1970s. When the scheme finally collapsed in December 2008, the total losses were estimated at $65 billion. It remains the largest financial fraud by a single individual in history. Madoff's victims included Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel's charitable foundation, director Steven Spielberg's foundation, the Hadassah Women's Organization, thousands of ordinary retirees who had invested their life savings. Many of these people lost everything. Some lost more than everything, having borrowed money to invest with Madoff because his returns seemed so reliable. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison. He died behind bars in April of 2021. The lesson of Madoff is chilling in its simplicity. If something sounds too good to be true, it is. Every single time, without exception. Let us cross the Atlantic now and talk about a company called Wirecard, because this story is so recent and so spectacular that it almost feels like fiction. Wirecard was a German financial technology company, a payment processor. It was listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange and was valued at more than $24 billion at its peak. It was a member of the prestigious DAX index, replacing Commerzbank, one of Germany's oldest banks. The company claimed to process payments for hundreds of thousands of merchants around the world. Its revenue and profits grew impressively year after year, but in June of 2020, something remarkable happened. The company's auditor, Ernst & Young, announced that 1.9 billion euros in cash that was supposed to be sitting in trust accounts in the Philippines simply did not exist. 1.9 billion euros. Gone. Or rather, never there in the first place. The CEO, Markus Braun, was arrested. The chief operating officer, Jan Marsalek, disappeared. He is believed to have fled to Russia and remains a fugitive to this day. The stock price went from over 100 euros to less than €1 in a matter of days. Investors lost billions, and the German financial regulatory system was left humiliated. What makes the Wirecard story particularly disturbing is that journalists had been raising red flags for years. The Financial Times had published multiple investigative reports questioning the company's accounting, but rather than investigating Wirecard, the German regulator investigated the journalists. Sometimes, the fraud is hiding in plain sight, and the people whose job it is to catch it are the last ones to look. Now let us talk about Enron, a name that has become shorthand for corporate fraud. In the late 1990s, Enron was one of the most admired companies in America. It was named America's most innovative company by Fortune magazine 6 years in a row. Its stock price soared. Its executives were treated as visionaries. Enron started as a natural gas pipeline company, but under the leadership of CEO Jeffrey Skilling and Chairman Kenneth Lay, it transformed itself into something much more ambitious: an energy trading company, a broadband company, a water company, a company that seemed to do a little bit of everything. The problem was that much of Enron's reported revenue was fictional. The company used a complex web of special-purpose entities, essentially shell companies, to hide billions of dollars in debt and inflate its earnings. The accounting was so complex that even Wall Street analysts could not understand it. When they asked questions, Enron's executives told them they were too unsophisticated to appreciate the company's business model. In October of 2001, Enron announced a $618 million loss. Within weeks, the full extent of the fraud was revealed. The company filed for bankruptcy in December. At the time, it was the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history. 20,000 employees lost their jobs. Many had their entire retirement savings invested in Enron stock. They lost everything. Kenneth Lay was convicted of fraud but died of a heart attack before sentencing. Jeffrey Skilling was sentenced to 24 years in prison. The Enron scandal led directly to the passage of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which fundamentally changed how public companies are audited and regulated in the United States. Let us talk about something different now: a fraud that was not committed by a company, but by an entire country, or rather, by the people running a country's finances. In 2001, Greece wanted to join the Eurozone. To do so, it had to meet certain financial criteria. Its budget deficit had to be below 3% of its gross domestic product. Its debt had to be manageable. Greece did not meet these criteria, so it hired Goldman Sachs to help it hide the true size of its debt through a series of complex financial instruments, essentially making billions of euros in debt temporarily disappear from the official books. It worked. Greece was admitted to the Eurozone, but the debt did not actually disappear. It was just hidden. And when the global financial crisis hit in 2008, Greece's true financial situation was revealed. The country's deficit was not 3%, it was over 12%. The resulting crisis nearly destroyed the euro itself. Greece required 3 separate bailout packages totaling over 260 billion euros. Unemployment reached 27%. Youth unemployment exceeded 60%. The Greek economy contracted by more than 25%. The human cost was devastating. Suicides increased by 35%. Homelessness surged. A generation of young Greeks emigrated in search of work. This story is a reminder that fraud is not limited to individuals or companies. When governments hide the truth about their finances, the consequences are measured not in dollars, but in human suffering. Let us talk about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, because this story captures something essential about how fraud works in the modern age. Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos when she was 19 years old. Her pitch was revolutionary: a device that could run hundreds of medical tests from a single drop of blood. No more needles, no more vials, just a tiny finger prick, and you would have your results in minutes. It was a beautiful story, and Holmes told it brilliantly. She wore black turtlenecks, like Steve Jobs. She spoke in a deep voice. She assembled a board of directors that included former secretaries of state, former senators, and retired military generals. Theranos raised more than $700 million from investors. The company was valued at $9 billion. Elizabeth Holmes was celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire in history. There was just one problem. The technology did not work. It had never worked. The blood tests were inaccurate. In some cases, dangerously so. Patients received false results. Some were told they had conditions they did not have. Others were told they were healthy when they were not. When journalist John Carreyrou of the Wall Street Journal began investigating, Theranos threatened him with lawsuits. Holmes personally called Rupert Murdoch, who owned the journal, to try to stop the story. It did not work. The story was published, the fraud was exposed, and in January of 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted of fraud. The lesson of Theranos is about the power of narrative. Holmes did not steal money by hiding it in shell companies or falsifying accounting records. She stole money by telling a story so compelling that nobody wanted to verify whether it was true. We have traveled through centuries of financial fraud tonight, from Charles Ponzi's postal coupons to Elizabeth Holmes's blood testing machine. And through all of these stories, certain patterns repeat. First, the fraudster is almost always charismatic. They are people you would want to believe, people who make you feel foolish for asking too many questions. Second, the returns are always too good to be true. Steady 10% in any market, 50% in 45 days. Revolutionary technology that will change the world. Third, complexity is used as a weapon. When you do not understand how the money is being made, that is not a sign of sophistication, it is a warning sign. Fourth, and this is perhaps the most important pattern, the people who raise concerns are always dismissed or attacked before they are proven right. If someone tells you they have found a way to generate extraordinary returns with minimal risk, be skeptical. If they cannot explain how in simple terms, be very skeptical. And if they try to make you feel stupid for asking questions, walk away. Your skepticism is not rudeness. It is your most valuable financial tool. On that note, I wish you a peaceful night. Keep your money close and your questions closer. Good night.